All right, we're back for another episode of the Rehashables. Me and Matt, we're a month late, but we're talking Andor today. Are you ready to go, pal?
Yeah, it continues again this stretch. Like Andor is one of my favorite things I've seen in forever. And then it's like right up there. I said that about the Pit last time, and we said that about Severance before. So it's like this quality of TV stuff is just insane. But Andor was something special.
Or people can't trust their opinions anymore because everything we say we watch is like the best thing ever. But truly, Andor is freaking awesome.
Yeah, I don't think we're over exaggerating it though. With any, and I mean about the things that we've talked about earlier, and I think other people have agreed that we're just at a time with TV that is just superior. I mean, there's just so much good content out there right now. It's insane.
And Andor is one of the best, dude. You know, it's been a long time coming. When was Andor season 1 again?
I think it was 2 years in
Yeah.
between, I think, or so. And again, might as well just kind of jump into that kind of stuff. I think you started watching it before me.
Yeah.
And it ended up getting a lot of buzz. But I remember, I don't know, at like D23 or Comic-Con, one of those things, years ago, and they announced, hey, we're going to do Andor. And I'm like, you mean like Rogue One was awesome, and I absolutely love that movie, but to do a TV series based off of Cassian and Andor from Rogue
That main
One,
character from. Yeah.
I wouldn't know how they were gonna do that.
And honestly, if you didn't know much about that, like Andor to me sounds like a place more than a person's name.
Mhm.
So it's like if you really didn't know much about Star Wars lore or Rogue One, you'd just be like, what is Andor? And, maybe you'd be into it, maybe you wouldn't. But honestly, dude, as soon as that first season happened, like people were all in. And it was an awesome season. And then I think season 2 totally lived up to the hype. I'm looking forward to talking all about it with you.
Yeah, I think, with Disney taking over Star Wars, and same thing with Disney taking over Marvel, it's just been this like oversaturation of the market of they just made so much content that it was really not great stuff, but
Mhm.
Andor is kind of the stuff, I think the thing out of everything that Disney's done since acquiring Lucasfilm and just took a story and just completely dominated it. So
It's easily the best thing. And the showrunner is Tony Gilroy. And my understanding is he's kind of like a black sheep with the whole Star Wars hierarchy. Like this is his thing and it's great, but they almost don't love all the adoration and love that it's gotten over the past few years, which is strange, but like it's head and shoulders above anything else that's been done since
it's
Disney
weird.
took over Star Wars.
I've read that too. Like like the Star Wars Lucasfilm people like don't like Andor. And I don't know how they can't. You know what I mean? Like
Obviously, they don't. It's not like they don't like it because
no.
I don't think they just like the way the fans are so drawn to it, and basically everything else in comparison is just that much lower. But
Well,
I'm glad we got it, dude.
absolutely. I mean, think about it. Like, because I just rewatched A New Hope. We can dive into all that kind of stuff. But in A New Hope, it was made 50 years ago. They talk about this group of rebels that stole the plans that show up how you can blow up the Death Star. Like, literally, that's pretty much the extent.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's they don't talk about it in the
Movie
as much as it's in the scrolling part.
It's in the
like
scrolling.
It's in the scrolling.
It's pretty much in the scrolling part, and then when like around the meeting, like with
Yeah.
like Luke, like them and Leia
Yeah.
and stuff like that, they talk about the plans and they show the plans. But like they literally, most of it is in the scroll, and they made a movie and a two season episodic TV arc that is like unbelievable. Just like concept of how they took that finished endpoint, worked their way backwards, and told this incredible story.
If they had never made Andor, Rogue One on its own would have been an amazing movie that speaks to them getting those plans to blow up the Death Star, and that honestly leads right directly into New Hope. Like the end of Rogue One is like a minute before A New Hope takes place. But then you take Andor, just so people know, and they focus on the main guy from Rogue One, Cassian Andor, and make 2 seasons of TV about it. That's freaking incredible. Some of the best TV. So, and now this is over. Like there's no more Andor to have because the end of Andor season 2 bleeds right into Rogue One.
It's all one incredible story. So Yeah, we can dive in, talk about it however you want, but there's so much to say.
There is, and I don't know any better way than just kind of going episode by episode, talking about some of our thoughts and just some high points. And we don't have to spend 10 minutes on every episode. I mean, it should be a couple minutes on each. And there's some I know that we probably want to spend more time on, but it'll be fun to revisit some of these episodes and get some of your thoughts if that works for you.
Yeah, that works great for me. There's definitely highlights in each section, and explain why we're doing the 3-episode.
Yeah, no, I will. So that's the thing. I tell me if you know of another TV show doing this, but the way they structured Andor season 2 is it's 12 episodes long, and there's 4 3-episode chunks. So the first 3-episode chunk takes place 1 year later from the end of Andor season 1, and then the next 3 is a period of time from there. The next 3 after that is more time, and then the last 3 is even more time. So it's just like, it's almost like little mini movies within the season that focus on these intense period of times where a lot of things are happening, and then the next 3 episodes would be like 3 years later, and things have totally changed, but it flows very well regardless.
And then each episode is 1 day during those 3. So no,
I haven't heard
pretty much. They
said that way, but maybe, yeah.
Tony Gilroy has almost said it where like each 3-episode arc is like the 3 most important days of that year, or so, and then it kind of goes forward in that kind of thing.
Things kind of happen in very intense 3-day weekends, long weekends with the rebellion. So,
yeah, it's big. Then the rest of the time was much more quiet.
Yeah, things are pretty laid back, except for these big weekends per year. So, all right, you want to just dive into episode 1?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's dive into episode 1, or the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, the first 3. So episode 1 takes place 1 year later. The big thing is Cassian stealing a TIE Avenger.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What were your thoughts on that first episode and the first 3 episodes, really? Like, was it hard for you to get back in?
Mm-hmm. Which is crazy, because we were giving this show as much praise as it is, and it literally, you said it is incredible. But it did take me a minute, and I didn't find it until afterwards. But what I wish I did, because so much time kind of went by between the end of season 1 and the start of season 2, I wish I watched like a good refresher, because I was a little bit confused of like.
But there was a good 20-minute refresher, right?
There was, but I didn't find it until
after. But like there ultimately was. So I guess if anyone still hasn't watched Andor and they want that refresher, I think it's on Disney Plus. Actually,
it is. Disney created like a 15-minute, pretty solid refresher of where things left off. But
I had a hard time getting back into these few episodes. Not because they were bad. It's just for, like you said, it's been years, and I did not watch that refresher either. But like again, big thing is Cassian just jumps in trying to get this TIE Avenger, but then also Mon Mothma. If you remember that's probably even a more like emotional. Storyline where at the end of last season, she basically agreed to an arranged marriage for her daughter with someone else. That there's a whole bunch of reasoning why. So that whole weekend is the wedding weekend. So any scene for her is their customs on her planet and what a wedding is like. So you get the Cassian stuff with the rebels, and then you have the Mon Mothma stuff, which I found to probably be even more interesting.
Yeah, I thought the stuff actually, because Cassian doesn't really get back to his group until the end of episode 3. You know what I mean? He's kind of dealing with some incompetent like jungle people for the first 2 episodes.
Very incompetent.
And you just you're like, all right, kind of move the story along. But anytime Mon Mothma was on screen with the wedding stuff, that was, I thought, what carried the first 3 episodes for sure. Because it was the stuff with Mon was so interesting, was you had everything that she was dealing with her daughter in the wedding, but then like her interactions with Luthen and Clara, and because Luthen and Clara, we don't have to give a huge backstory, about who they are. If people watch the show, they'll know who they are. If not, they won't. Well, it'd be tough to explain. But they are all undercover too. So like that, they're interacting with Luthen with the wig and Clara and Mon talking about the behind the scenes stuff they had to do for the rebels was the most interesting aspect of the first 3 episodes for me.
In particular, you really enjoyed the wedding scene at the end of the 3rd episode.
100%. So the best part of that whole arc is the very, very end. And I thought of you here because there's a song, I believe it's called Brasso. It's the song that is playing at the wedding. Awesome dynamic of a wedding, by the way. I've been to hundreds of weddings before. I would have loved to have done this wedding. It was insane.
Daytime wedding.
What?
It was like daytime wedding.
It was a daytime wedding, which normally are never fun, and the parties are never good. But this one was, where they had this like DJ, like almost like disco ball spaceship thing fly in and play music, and they were listening to like some cool galactic house style music, and the song is called Brasso because I've listened to it. And Mon, in all of her despair, is just ripping back shots and having the time of her life on the dance floor. It looks like really letting loose.
Can we talk about why that's the case?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, she like does not. She's not happy about her daughter having to do this, and there's she has a conversation with her daughter before she even gets married. Like, you don't have to do this. I wish my mom would have said that I didn't have to do this, and the daughter was like not very receptive to that.
She said, "I wish you didn't tell me that."
Yeah, I wish you didn't tell me that. Like, so that was kind of weighing on her, but also the Take Homa stuff. This guy, who childhood friend of hers, they kind of got in. I mean, Mon Mothma is a senator, but is also involved in the rebellion on like a kind of secret level.
Yeah.
What's that?
Secretly. Yeah.
Yeah, secretly. So like, there's blackmail stuff from last season, but like Take Homa, old childhood friend, basically like was trying to squeeze her a little bit in that episode.
I think he already financed her in season 1 and stuff for well, I don't think he knew exactly where it was going, but he kind of had an idea of where it was going. But then he was hurting a lot financially and was trying to, get some money back, or he was having conversations with people that she did not want him having conversations with. Anyway, he was possibly implicating the whole thing.
So she talks to Luthen, who's the freaking absolute man. Freaking love Luthen. We'll talk about Luthen a little bit, but like, Luthen's like, we have to kill this guy.
Yeah.
So like, when she's dancing is after like Take Homa gets picked up by the driver.
Yeah.
And we never see him get killed, but like at the end of that episode, the 3-episode arc, it's heavily implied that he is killed afterwards. So that like, between like the whole wedding weekend, like what happened with him, like there's a lot weighing on her, and she kind of lets go in that dancing scene, and that's why it was like one of the emotional parts to that 3-episode arc.
It was awesome, and Luthen, we'll talk about him 100 more times, but he will do whatever it takes to keep the cause alive.
Luthen is the guy that is, there's many people involved in the rebellion, but as far as Andor goes, he's like the guy about the rebellion. Like, he pulls the strings, he makes the decisions, he's ruthless, but he's awesome, and he's
the Bill Belichick. He's the Bill Belichick of the rebellion. Yeah. Like, he's trading Drew Bledsoe, to Buffalo, cutting ties with, Lori Malloy and stuff. Like, guy has no, only cares about the cause, doesn't have any personal relationships get in the way, and will make the hard decision.
And the best part is he never made it to his Jordan Hudson aspect of his career either. He only the good Belichick. So that's that part's good.
No, he did not. Never got to the Jordan Hudson part for sure. That's funny.
So one of the things I love to think about when we listen to Joe and Mal podcast on the Ringerverse, it's
House
of Bar. So anyways, they would joke about like how they killed Take Homa. And because they last showed Take Homa in this like car-ish flying thing, and it's like, did they just freaking flip the thing upside down and like dump him out? Like, who knows how he actually died? But like, the way they show him going off to his death is in this vehicle, and it's like they're just gonna freaking crash that thing, and flip it over and drop him in a canyon someplace. But
there's no way that seatbelt is working. There's no way that seatbelt does not click.
They never said how he.
He dies, and that was just really cool. And I do guess that song has been playing in clubs and stuff like that, kind of around the world. Oh, I've read it online. That's what it said.
Let me know. Let me know what clubs.
Yeah, you'll go.
I'll be there.
So you want to talk a little bit because the ending of episode 3 with Cassian finding Bix and him in the TIE fighter was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So give the mini recap.
Here's the thing about Andor that's just different than other Star Wars stuff. It's just so gritty, and the realism aspects of it, you know what I mean? There's no force, really. There's no lightsabers. There's no Jedi. There's no magic. It's really like, down to the earth, like kind of people, just normal people doing normal people things.
You could take this story and move it out of Star Wars, and it would just be like an oppressed versus the oppressor kind of thing, and like what what people that are oppressing people like do, the mind games that they play, like just you can picture being in, these different people's shoes and how awful it must be. So I think again that's what I think it does well.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
kind of when Cassian reunites with his group, you see that the Empire is kind of putting pressure on that planet where they all are,
Yeah,
and just how like uncomfortable things are, and
they're
it's just
doing an audit. They're doing an
yeah.
audit, and no one is, for farmlands and going through them stuff and what they originally agreed to. Now the Empire wants more of, and there's some, they have power. These people don't have power, and they completely abuse it.
They just want to live their life in their little
Yeah,
farm,
yeah. And the Empire just keeps asking for more and asking for more and asking for more, and Cassian just comes back at the right time. But I just thought that was just something to mention, for the
And he
first.
lost some people from his crew,
Yeah,
and his girl Bix and him, and they survived onto the next story arc. But yeah, it was emotional. They lost some people, but that's what it's like in these rebellion type scenarios where they're fighting back.
yeah. So awesome. So that's probably good on the first three.
I will say by the end of the third episode, like I
Yeah,
was back.
100. I would
Yeah.
exactly 100%.
Just
And they're
took a
not
couple
like
to get going.
the first
But
two. I think the episode's like 35 minutes, 40 minutes. They're not long.
there's some short ones. Definitely some short ones, which I do.
Yeah.
If it's well done, like keep it as short as possible. Like that's freaking fine with me. All right, next 3 episodes. This is a little bit more Gorman focused,
which is awesome. So we don't even know anything about Gorman. And you hear about Gorman and stuff. They mentioned it before, but to actually go to this planet, Gorman, and you get this. I mean, I think we might have talked about this, but it's essentially like almost like France. It really is like a.
Well, yeah, they have like the people definitely have like a French aspect to
a
them.
French feel on and how it looks, and just again talk about the world building. I mean, I think I don't know if it's episode 5 or 4, but they're going to Gorman, and the whole thing is subtitled because they're speaking in Gorman or whatever,
which is like a French-German combination, at least inspired.
But it's just not even a real. It's not a real language. It's just like these actors like learned this language, and that just is just like mind blowing to me. You know what I mean? And Gorman ends up becoming, a huge part of the whole story.
So Gorman is a place that was referenced in. You might not even know this because I don't like what Clone Wars or freaking Rebels or something like animated,
one of the animated things.
But what is ultimately happening is the Empire setting up shop there because they need a resource.
Yes, correct. I mean, we end up finding. You want to talk what that resource is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Kyber, right? Is it?
It's something that's going to power the Death Star.
It's a mineral or whatever that is what powers the Death Star to give it all its power to blow up planets that you see in A New Hope. But they don't tell the Gorman people that. They make up other reasons to go there, and their ultimate goal is to basically force the Gorman people to rebel against them, make them the bad guys, and then kind of take over the entire planet.
Which is like classic freaking story. You know what I mean? That's like how it's done. It's like they keep pushing and pushing and taking more, and then it's like the people rebel, and then they like freaking take them all out. And it's like, hey, we didn't do anything. These freaking people, they attacked us, and like they've been and they're planting the seeds for this in these episodes. There's Cyril, from season 1. Like he's in Gorman, and he is working for the Empire or whatever, but he's secretly communicating with the rebels, but kind of like
he's almost like a double agent, like a double agent. You know what I mean? Like he always was a bad guy. He was a bad guy in season 1. He's got that great look on him. You know what I mean? Like not trustworthy, good looking guy, but he always wanted to be something and aspired to be more and wanted to be high up in the Empire. Ended up dating a girl, Dedra, who's was working her way up in the Empire too, who's an awesome character. But he was sent to go to Gorman for a while, but after being there for a long time, you kind of don't know what side he's on because he knows the Gorman people are good people, understands their side, but he's still working for the Empire. So his arc was really, really interesting.
I mean, he's ultimately never on their side, although he might have some like ties to him, like at the end he leaves a little bit on the Empire, but like it's not like he was truly like a guy on the Uprising side.
No, he wasn't, but he did warn the Gorman, his like friends, like not to do this and to go away, but he also was being used. too.
Mhm.
He didn't know. He did not
But
know.
he did not know why they were there.
He did not know the
Deidre
full
never
extent.
told him.
No, he
He was
did
kind of
not.
kept in the dark, and he was pissed about that too at the end.
So you know what I mean. But it's complicated. That's what just shows how deep this show is. Just a very, very complicated, real problems. You know.
Mhm. Is this the 3 episode block that we had the Deidre, Cyril, and his mom?
Yeah. Awesome.
Uh,
Yes. Yep.
See, so Cyril's mom is freaking crazy. She's just like very annoying to be around, and she has an interesting personality. And you just got a little glimpse into what he's had to deal with his whole upbringing. So Deidre and Cyril are obviously in a relationship, and it was just kind of interesting to see how they interacted, and then also how Deidre handled it.
Yeah.
And she kind of put her in her place a little bit when he wasn't around, and then their relationship progressed from there.
So I kind of liked the mom.
Yeah.
I kind of liked her.
You're a fan.
You know what I mean? She wasn't like super great to her son and was very opinionated and very, you know what I mean? She definitely played a type of mom that I think everyone just like knows or seen that character before or knows someone they're like that kind of mom who thinks she knows it all and is very kind of condescending and passive aggressive and that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like loved Cyril so much and really did want the best for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And other things will come up later that really was kind of moving to me and stuff like that. So but I did love that whole dynamic between the three of them.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the key things that happened in that last episode 6?
So I think this is the one I believe Gorman. That's when their uprising is kind of starting, and there's one character Val who's Mon's cousin, who she's kind of plays not two sides too, but in the public eye she's part of Mon's family. She's very wealthy, carries herself very well. On the other side, it's also an integral part of the rebellion.
Yeah.
And Luthen sends her to Gorman to kind of see what's going on because Gorman wants to attack the Empire, one of their ships, and take their weapons.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a lot of things around, but the Empire knows this is going to happen because of Cyril and his stuff, and the Empire wants the rebels to do this because again, they do this. Yes, some of their people may die, but for the greater cause, make the rebels look like bad people and all that sort of stuff was kind of part of their plan. And so Val kind of helped the Gorman people with this heist thing. It does go awry. One of her love interests ends up dying on the whole thing, but it just kind of shows
this is them getting a bunch of weapons.
It's them getting a bunch of weapons, and now the Gorman people in this year that it's happening, they're starting to like get what they need to actually cause a true rebellion on Gorman, which is exactly what the Empire wants to happen.
So it's just laying the groundwork for future episodes. Another big thing that happens in the other episode is with Bix, where last season she was tortured and she was able to confront her torturer and kill him and get some revenge, which is big because that
kind of happened all very fast, huh? Like I remember because it happened. It was a big thing last year, and she was dealing with PTSD for like episodes in this season, taking drugs, couldn't sleep,
wake up in the middle of the night. She's kind of having flashbacks, and Cassian would find her and out of bed. But she did get a little bit of that closure, which I wasn't like so emotionally moved by it or anything like that. But it is something that happened in those episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest stuff now is Gorman. You know what I mean? So, 25 minutes in, I think now we're really getting to the meat.
All right. Are we 25 minutes in? We're freaking holy smokes. So yeah, Gorman. Like, all right, episodes 7 to 9. These freaking episodes.
This is the best stretch of TV, I think, of this year. Seriously. Like, these 3 episodes, 7, 8, and 9, are incredible.
Yeah, I mean, dude, all right. Why don't we start with episode 7? Do you have any type of, like, info on episode 7? I mean, 8 and 9 is kind of where it's at, but, like, does anything come to mind for 7 for you?
Not really. It was more so, I think, when Cassian gets called to go to Gorman because they know this big protest is going to be happening, and Luthen sends him here. Well, no, actually, Will and Luthen send him there because they know Deirdre's going to be there, and they want Cassian to kill Deirdre, basically, on there. But once you get there, they did such a good job this season of by this point, you are invested in Gorman. You know Like things look familiar. You know who the characters are, and it's all building towards this big protest where I believe it was 25 years ago, 20 like something like that. There was a huge Gorman massacre that ended up where 500 people from Gorman ended up being brutally murdered by the Empire. And they were kind of going back here and building up to that protest for episode 8, but nothing else really sticks out in 7 for me.
So episode 8 is when shit goes down, right? So this is that big protest, and again, everyone's there. Cyril's there, Cassian's there. Like all the pieces are in place in Gorman, and dude, it's freaking kind of crazy how it happens. But like, you could see how like this is a playbook that has been happening in history and will continue to happen, where it's generally a peaceful protest. And then the Empire, they shot someone, right?
The Empire had orders. No, not many people knew, but Deirdre was given orders, and she was very shaken up by it, to have a sniper from the Empire shoot one of their own guards at the protest to make it seem like it was the rebellion or Gorman, the protesters, doing it.
Dude, you could see how any protest a peaceful protest could be made to look not peaceful, all by one act of violence. And it could be unclear on how that happens. And in this case, like, the Empire shoots their own person, and the whole thing erupts into like a gigantic, basically, fight between the protesters and the Empire. And it's just like that. You almost can't trust, like, this is not breaking news, but like, you can't trust like the narratives that are given to you, in any of these situations.
Well, the thing that I thought was also most interesting was they had like media, like there. You know what I mean?
But the media was always very pro-Empire, which is like,
it was state media.
So the camera would pan past these like reporters talking in front of their cameras, and it was always like spin zone type stuff where
it was just like these like violent protesters out here now trying, you know what I mean? And then when like the protest was over, you see the news people there. These like, here are fallen, Imperial soldiers that gave their life for their cause, and I'm like, it was scary. It was
you could see how that would play to people who's watching this. They're like, yeah, you know what I mean? These soldiers gave their life, and look at those people in Gorman. They're freaking crazy.
They're animals. They're not.
And all it takes is that stuff. You truly can't believe anything that you see when it comes to new stuff.
There was this scene, this episode, like, literally, I think, like, brought me to tears. Like, I'm not afraid to say, like, it was so emotional when the Gorman people were singing their national anthem. Again, a made-up language, a made-up national anthem, and they were all in arms and singing. I was like, man, this is something special. Something special happening with that.
They playing that national anthem in the clubs too?
They should be. They probably be a great mix for that. But then once that gunshot happened,
that was a good scene though. Like that, they had been building towards this scene, so you throw in that moment too, and it just adds to the emotional touch to the whole thing.
So all hell breaks loose, and the one other thing that you get to find out from this section is what the Empire does, and the protests start getting out of hand, is they release these robots, these K2 units, who will connect to Rogue One afterwards and stuff. But you see these things, and again, you don't think of it with Star Wars. This was very violent. Like, this was as violent of a Star Wars thing.
People getting thrown into buildings and smashed and killed, and it was
normally, like, there's this one thing where a K2 unit picks up one of the Gorman girl rebels that we've kind of come to know and stuff, and he picks her up and throws her, like 20 feet, and she hits the ground. In any movie or show, she hits the ground and she like rolls out and like gets back up, and she's a little injured. And like, she hits the ground here, and you can tell the second she hits the ground, she's dead.
Yeah.
Like, which is what would really happen. You know what I mean? Like, that's exactly what would happen. You know what I mean? If a metal robot threw you 20 feet up in the air and you landed on concrete, you would die. And that was just kind of so shocking of just how violent it was, which it needed to be to show, how it was. So
let's close the loop on the K2 units, because these things are out there. They're doing damage.
And they're almost unstoppable. Like, they're unstoppable.
But there's I forget who was in like a showdown with someone, but then here comes Cassian with like some type of vehicle, crushes one into a building, right?
Yeah.
Basically takes it out.
Yeah.
And then ultimately when the whole episode's done, which I don't want to jump to the end because there's other
Yeah.
stuff to talk about. Like when it's all said and done, like he takes that unit with him, and that is a character for the rest of this series, and then Rogue One, and it's a little bit of like an origin story of how that relationship and character came to be, because obviously a very big character in
Yeah.
Rogue One and in those last few episodes after this one.
But two more things on this episode, in addition to that K2 unit, which was awesome, well said. With that is, so the other big thing here is you get a showdown between Cassian and Cyril.
Cyril's wanted nothing more than to find
Cyril
Cassian.
in season 1, it was his mission to get Cassian. That was
Yeah.
like all he wanted to do. He would go to Tevik, I believe, is where he was from with Marva, and he was trying to get Cassian. That was his job, was to get him. Okay, never could. Cassian made him look so dumb in season 1, so much so where I think he got demoted. Right, he ended up losing his job and that kind of stuff. So Cyril's been so obsessed with him, and he finally, in the chaos of all this happening, sees Cassian and he attacks him in this really good fight. And Cyril
It was like a by chance thing.
No,
you know? Because at this point, Cyril had his falling out with Deidre, and
he was
that,
out.
You know,
He was out.
He's like out on the other side of the barricades. He just happens to see him. He's like, freaking Cassian's like right there. So anyways, they have like this big battle.
A good fight, and Cyril had him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in that moment, it was like when Cyril had a gun facing the Cassian, it was done, and Cassian looks at him and he says, "Who are you?" And Cyril's like, "I'm literally obsessed with you." Like that, him saying that, like almost hurt him so much.
Yeah.
He was so taken back by it. And then he ended up getting shot by someone else, and that's how Cyril ends up dying.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a not heroic death. You know, it's nothing. He just got taken out in the battle.
A terrible way to go out.
Yeah.
A terrible way to go out. A person that you've been obsessed with doesn't even know about you. There's this famous line in Mad Men where Don Draper is in an elevator with one of his coworkers, and his coworker is this like a subordinate guy, and is just saying awful things to Draper, and he's saying these terrible things. He goes, "I feel sorry for you," and Draper goes, "I don't even think about you." Like that, and that's like that one line, like completely shut everything down. It's just like Cyril. It's like, I don't even know who you are.
It's the worst thing you can really say to somebody.
The worst thing. Absolute worst thing. And he ends up dying. So that happens. And then the very, very last thing at the end of the episode is as Cassian is flying away and stuff, there's a distress call from the Gorman people. And there was a woman on the intercoms and like, "Will somebody help us? Is anybody out there?" I have like goosebumps just like saying like, it was like her, like a cry for help it was overplayed of all the destruction that just happened. And Cassian is crying while he's flying away because this traumatic thing just happened. And then the episode ends, and I'm like, this is just like, it was insane. It was so
That's a really good episode. For me, it was my second favorite episode.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I could see why it would be anyone's number one favorite episode of the season. Like, it's just so much to it, so much of it building towards it, and they really hit a home run with it. Just the execution was great. I have nothing bad to say about it at all.
Yeah, so awesome. And then goes in episode 9. So 9 is 9 your favorite episode?
9 was my favorite episode.
9 was my favorite episode.
Oh, it was?
It was, yeah.
I thought 8 was your favorite. Okay, so we're on the same page. But like, this is where you start to see like the repercussions of what happened.
Yeah.
And this was the time, like, up until now, Mon Mothma has been operating in the shadows when it comes to the rebellion. Again, she's a senator. Senators are like a big deal, right? So this is the time where she has to speak out on the Senate floor about what had happened in Gorman and just come out against it. But she also knows that this is gonna be like very bad.
Well, because what's going on what's everyone saying? What's everyone saying on TV? What's all the other senators saying? What's happening in the Senate chambers? At that time, the Gorman senator is being arrested.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is freaking wild. You know, like, again, there's so many parallels to our present time. It's actually kind of alarming when you really think about it. But yeah, that guy's being like, the Republic is falling apart. You know, and it's really transitioning to like full blown the Empire at that point. You know, again, the Gorman senator is being arrested, and that's a huge deal on its own. But so this takes place in the Senate, which I actually think is like a very cool place to.
Yeah. That's what I like about it. I like the almost like the politics of it. Like, it's just it's like so Game of Thronesy and like so interesting.
I enjoy like the setting. I guess where they filmed the Senate is a museum in France, maybe, or
Spain. But
Spain, someplace in Europe is beautiful. Like the shape of the building is very nice with the water and the outdoor scene and all that stuff. But yeah, so like this is Mon saying like I'm gonna go give my speech on the Senate floor, and then like what's gonna happen after that? She's got to get to was it Yavin?
Yavin, which is where the rebellion headquarters are. But
And you hear about that place throughout this
that
series.
that's actually in A New Hope and
Yeah,
Rogue
exactly.
One and that
Yes.
Yavin.
So, anyways, but like that's the plan. She's going to talk, but so I mean, I don't know if you're trying to jump into it, but like she basically says her speech.
Well, before we get to the speech though, because what's so great about that episode is there's this buildup. You know what I mean? Is that there's only one person who knows that Monk is going to give this speech, and his name is Bale. He's another senator, played by Jimmy Smits back in the prequels and in Rogue One. Now played by Benjamin Bratt, or whatever. Great recasting, awesome. He was awesome in this show. That guy's the man. He was great, but he's the only other
jarring difference though. Like if you don't know that, that's good to know that when you see Benjamin
kind of like they look similar.
Yes, so they're kind of like those. They're like typical that guys kind of.
Yeah. But so basically, what happens is they know how serious it's going to be when Mon gives this speech. Bale has to be kind of like plead ignorance, be like, I didn't know this was that she was gonna say this, but they know that after she gives this speech, it's game over for them because everyone else is kind of coming for them. So they have this incredible plan of when Mon is done her speech, Bale is gonna have his guys, his people, take her and get her safe. But his people is all completely implicated. There's a mole in one of them. They would have taken her to the Empire, and Luthen knows that. So he has to send Cassian there to get her. And it's like, if your Mon doesn't know Cassian, is like the trust is like, oh, you don't know who to trust and who's
she doesn't.
It's crazy.
So she gives her speech. She condemns what happened in Gorman, and I think ends her speech with like something against.
This speech is incredible. This speech is so good. I recommend just literally watching that 3.5 minute speech. It is so good.
And then, but it ends with like Emperor Palpatine is the person responsible for all this stuff, and it becomes like a huge deal, and like alarms are going off. People are like trying to like get to her after, and again by this point, Cassian's already sorted out some of the stuff with the mole people that were supposed to get her, and like she sees Cassian afterwards, and she has to trust him to get her out, and they don't have a pre-existing relationship, and then from there it's just them getting out of the Senate building, which was freaking awesome.
It's funny. So it's like they talked about on the House of Bar podcast, but like Cassian's trying to convince her, you know what I mean? Be like, hey, I have friends everywhere. That was a secret line that Luthen told Mon that he would say. That she still wasn't kind of buying it. She said, hey, I know Val. Val's done this, blah, still not buying it. The one thing that she said that ended up convincing her is like, hey, Luthen, I know he can be difficult. And she's like, oh, yep, boom, all right. I'll come with you. I trust you now. You know what I mean? I thought that was funny. But then that sequence, again, shows how badass Cassian is because he's killing people as they're leaving. And from his perspective or Mon's perspective, like, you don't know. Like, you're not positive these are moles. You know what I mean? Like, he's just shooting people and asking questions later, but he ends up being right the entire time. It's so awesome, that escape scene. It's so good.
It's so great. And then I think it basically ends with, like, they're out, and they're bringing her to Yavin. And one thing that's really interesting is, in Star Wars lore, there is an established story as to who breaks her out of the Senate after this speech, and it's like the Gold Team or something like that. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's like the Gold Team is who gets credit for breaking her out. But to retrofit the whole thing, basically Cassian gets her out, and then there's a scene at the end where one of the guys from Yavin's like, you did this, but we have to, create this story about the Gold Team really getting her out. You know what I mean? So it's funny how they took pre-existing lore, make it work for the show, and then did something that I guess could happen in real life where like they don't give the true story of what happens. Cassian didn't get like the credit to the public, but
which is the whole underlying story of this show is that Luthen gives this great monologue in season 1 is that these are the people when Luke and Han and Chewie at the end of episode 4 in New Hope are standing on the podium getting their medals, and they're the ones getting the praise. It's all of these people the ones behind the scenes that made this all happen, the ones that will never, ever, ever get credit, never get their names mentioned, never get parades about them. It's Cassian, it's Clara, it's Luthen, it's all these people, and that's what's just so beautiful about the show. So
Totally. Which brings us to our last
3.
set of episodes, which it's hard to follow those 3, but I thought they freaking crushed it. What was it, 3 years later for these last 3?
No, just 1 year later.
Okay.
No, just 1 year later.
For this one.
Nope, just 1 year. 1 year later, into the final 3 here, which was so. Again, on all these these like the highest rated like episodes in the show history and like TV of this year. But 10, ended up kind of being a little bit outside the box, which worked perfectly. If you want to dive into 10.
So is 10 the one where it starts with Luthen?
It's all Luthen Clay episode.
Luthen Clay. So what's the guy that was their mold inside the Empire? What was his name again?
Lennox? Shit. There was I forget his name off the top of my head. I can find it in a second. But
yeah, no, I think that's what it is. But basically this guy, he was the one that was part of like the great speech that Luthen had in season 1 that everyone, remembers him for. But this guy has been feeding feeding information to Luthen throughout the past few years. And now we're at the point where they think or he thinks that they know about him, and he's trying to get out. He's worried about his kids.
He knows that what he has for information will get him killed.
Yeah.
It's a matter of time.
So he's trying to like talk with Luthen and secure his future for himself and his family. End of the day, Luthen gets the information from him, and then you don't see it, but he basically leaves him dead on the bench. So you don't know what happens to his kid and his wife, and he's obviously dead. And it just shows like the stakes. Like, Luthen again would do anything for the rebellion. He used this guy. He had leverage over him for a number of years. And when his usefulness ran out, it didn't matter that he had a kid and a wife. It didn't matter that, he had helped him all this period of time. It's like freaking killed him right there and left him for dead. That
was jarring. That was jarring when that happened. And then when Luthen got the information and knew it, and this was important information. So what do you like? I don't remember exactly the words that kind of were mentioned to him, but it was basically they knew this they were building this big weapon, which ended up being the Death Star, and this name Galen Erso is the name that like is the most important thing of this message, because Galen Erso is the engineer from Rogue One that the Empire had that built, that he was the mastermind behind the Death Star, but he's the one that put the one little fault in it to make it explode if done right, working for the rebellion. So that was very important information.
And they say Galen's name like 100 times in the next few.
Well, they're making it, they're beating you over the head with it. To be like,
that's the time.
This is how we know he's so important in Rogue One.
So the mole is Lonnie. The guy's name.
Lonnie.
No, so just so we know. So, and then it brings us to this freaking awesome scene with. So Deidre has wanted to capture Luthen for this whole series too. So Luthen, again, he's leading the show on the Empire, but he's also this like high-end art dealer guy who's been around, wears a wig.
That's his cover. Yeah,
that's his cover. So Luthen's in the art store doing Rebel Luthen stuff, but then Deidre comes in and like she finally has him.
Well, he knows that it's a matter of time because he meets with Clara beforehand, and Clara, he's like basically going in 2 different directions. Like Clara has to go here. He tells her the information so she knows and has it in her head what to happen. He's gonna go and destroy things at the office because he knows the Empire is coming. And then Deidre gets there, and she's so freaking. Her ego completely gets in the way, and she has to have this theatrics, has to give this big monologue saying how I caught
That's
you.
not how you capture a guy.
That's not how you capture anybody.
You just freaking go in and take him down, but instead she I mean, Luthen knows who she is right away. You know what I mean? He's kind of playing the game. He's trying to feel it out. Like he's acting like his art dealer self.
He's so good, Stellan Skarsgård. He is so his voice is so good.
I mean, I love watching that guy. He's electric on screen. But like, so she comes in and they're talking about different art pieces. He's giving a little history. He's playing the game. But like, it eventually, I forget exactly what she said, but like, it came out like, this is it. Like, she has him. And
but while she's giving that monologue,
while she's talking, and like I think he turned his back to her or something like that, and basically stabbed himself in the chest with a knife that he had previously been talking to her about like 10 seconds before. And it's like, dude, you totally botched that capture.
And while that's happening, before she comes, he poured some acid over this big like control board. And like that now just has time to disintegrate and get into the system and all that sort of stuff too while she's talking.
Which ended up being like recoverable for the Empire.
Well,
a little bit.
We'll talk
but
about
yeah,
that.
like total botched scenario that the Empire didn't ultimately love. But it was a great scene for Luthen, like in a great way for that encounter to take place in that shop. You know, I was something that I would have looked forward to for the whole first basically season and what we were up to in the second season. So awesome spot. And I think it ends with that episode with him being left alive at the hospital.
No, it's the full arc. The full arc of that episode is Clea going now to the hospital.
Really, that whole episode.
The whole episode is Clea.
Great episode. That's definitely like the third favorite episode.
So Clea, who's kind of been, she was Luthen's number 2 the entire time. Really is kind of co-running this whole thing with her and about the rebellion. But it's just a good. I mean, this is the one episode I think of the whole series where Cassian isn't in this at all. And it's mostly just a Clea and Luthen episode. You get their backstory, how they met.
Is this flashbacks this episode?
Yeah, all this episode.
Okay. Dude, what a great episode. Yeah, so you get to see like their relationship because like you don't really know what Clea's true relationship to Luthen is through this whole TV series. I mean, she seems they obviously have a close relationship. They work in the art place together while they're managing the rebellion. She's younger. I'm not sure if it's his daughter, not his daughter, some kid, girlfriend, or whatever. But like ultimately, Luthen took her under his wing from a very early age and basically just taught her everything he knows.
That would have been the Jordan Hutchins situation, the Bill Belichick thing, if they weren't dating. But it was much more of a father-daughter type thing. And it was great. And she knew that he went to the hospital. They ended up come out stabilizing Luthen, but not enough for him to talk or torture him or make him go through hell. And Clea knew that she had to get into that hospital and essentially pull the plug on him and kill him.
Just because they would have got, because it was that important to the rebellion. They would have got information from him, and it just would have, obviously wouldn't want him alive in that situation regardless. And it kind of confirms that emotional tie between the two of them that, you knew was there, but you got a chance to finally see this episode. The things that they did, the acts of rebellion that they did over the years, and just the relationship, it just really made it a touching episode because she does ultimately navigate into the hospital and was able to kill him. All on her own.
She is such a badass in this, like such a badass in this whole sequence. She was, I mean, one of the parts where when they found out someone infiltrated the hospital, they said it has to be at least 3 people. You know what I mean? But it was just Clea kind of doing her thing. So just her being a badass and killing Luthen in that episode ends with him dying, essentially. Yeah.
So last couple episodes, though, just because I actually got to run out of here not that long, but Clea is back at the old safe house that Bix was in with Cassian earlier in the season. So there's that, trying to like get back to that, get her out of there. There's a little bit of drama along that. Like I think the Empire does get some information from that melted thing that you were talking about, and they identify where she is. So there's a little bit of drama around going back to that.
It was so funny. It was one quick like little scene where the tech operator is like working on the thing trying to recover it. I don't know if you remember that, and she's like, "Oh wow, this is like pretty advanced. they did a really good job." I'm like, "Oh wow, they've been going in the back door like this," and like the Empire is like looking at her like, "What are you freaking doing? Like, what are you doing?" And I just thought that was such a funny little moment of humor when they were doing it. But now it's getting back, and now Clea has to get that information to the rebellion. That's the whole thing. Galen Erso, Kyber crystals, like all this stuff that has to get to the information, because this is what ends up leading them to Rogue One, leading them to the plans to blow the Death Star. So it's all, like, again, goosebumps just talking about it. Like, this was so important. This is what they did. This is what Star Wars is all about,
Totally. And I don't want to like breeze over it too much, but ultimately that 11th episode is the Empire going after her, and you get a chance to see like the K2SO
awesome,
like have a great like moment of basically like, kicking everyone's ass and kind of saving the day and helping save her and gets her over to Yavin. But in the meantime, at the end, Cassian and Bix have a little thing, right? Cassian and Bix are like a thing together
It was
over
actually
there.
episode 9 where that happened, I think. But we
Oh,
can,
it is?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
anyways, on my notes, it says this episode for whatever reason, but like, then I guess it's silly to bring it up, but she was gone then at this point. But
the important part about this is now there are people in the Empire, and again, it kind of shows this kind of state, that what the Empire does is all these people in the higher up, because this information has gotten out, leaks have been happening, begin to fall. And Deirdre, she is the hottest thing coming in the Empire, you know what I mean? Like a fast riser, she's the one that ends up taking the fall. And all of her hard work, all of that stuff, she's going to end the rest of her life in an Imperial prison and stuff. And you see her go down, you see Partagaz, him kill himself at the end.
yeah, because they're all going to take the fall.
They're all going to take the fall for this stuff. And it just shows what kind of government this is.
Yeah, because they, like you said, they were the rising stars. They were doing all this stuff that they needed to do for the Empire, and as soon as things go sideways, it's like freaking Deidre ends up in prison that they were in season 1 where you can't touch the floor.
Yep.
And then, like you said, Partagaz ends up freaking killing himself before he can get taken in. So it just all falls apart for the key bad guys throughout the 2 seasons of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So the end, and I just want to say one more thing because we haven't mentioned his name once. But Ben Mendelsohn, the guy that plays Krennic,
yeah,
like an all-time bad guy. Like he was
in Rogue One, so it was like nice to bring him back into this.
He's not as big in Andor, but he is just, man, that guy. Whenever he's on screen, he owns the screen. Like when he came in and like started questioning Deirdre and stuff, and there was one scene where he put like his finger on her head, and the face that she makes, like when it happens, and you could tell like he just is so good in this role. Yeah. I just loved him. I just wanted to mention that. Thought he was great. So
yeah, he was awesome, And like, I guess as we're wrapping up the season, a couple things to mention. It ends with Cassian leaving.
You should putting on all the clothes, like his the jacket, the holster.
From Rogue One.
Yeah, literally.
He sees the Force healer that he saw as he's walking by. That was a few episodes. We didn't really talk too much about it. And then basically he's leaving with K2SO to go in directly to
find this guy named Tevik.
Yeah, which they're doing in Rogue One. So like that was because like Rogue One picks up right after this, and it is jarring to see young Cassian Andor versus old, like
10 years difference.
Order. But it's a little bit of suspension disbelief. But yeah, I mean this is picking up right from there.
But you it's almost like it's not a finale. You know what I mean? It's weird because it literally, like, you watch this and the second this is done, you're going into Rogue One. Mm-hmm. And how they connected it real quick, just like this part. So the beginning of Rogue One, like Cassian goes and he meets this guy Tevik who he has to go, and Tevik's all panicky and he's like, Urso, and then like Cassian looks at him and goes, Urso? Galen Urso? And it's like, this is the name that they just heard about in Andor for like days before, and it, like how they connected that and like what a genuine reaction it would have been for him, I just thought was so good, and what a beautiful piece of storytelling. So
the very last scene is Bix on a different planet at some point in the future with a child, Cassian's child.
Yeah.
And that's meant to show hope and the future that they're fighting for. And it's a little bit bittersweet because if you know Rogue One, you know that everyone basically dies in that, including Cassian, so you see this and you know that like he's living on through his child with Bix, and that they're hopefully someplace safe. And that's why they're doing all this stuff for.
Ah, dude, incredible show. I've gone back and watched clips nonstop for the last 2 weeks. I'm going to go listen to Brasso now, that song. And
I'm going to been at softball practice for the girls in 20 minutes.
The girls will do that. And then the Gorman National Anthem. Just play the Gorman National Anthem.
I should have done that at the game yesterday. We were hosting yesterday. Imagine we did that. They'd be like, what the hell? There'd probably be like one person in the stands being like, yes. I'll make eye contact.
Yeah. So I know 55 minutes into it, but I could talk about Andor for days. So I'm glad.
Dude. I wanted to like talk a little bit more Rogue One, but I do love the conversation that we were able to have about Andor, and it was mostly Andor focused. And there's other things that we watched, and we'll save that for another episode sometime soon. But like, it's nice that we were able to dedicate. I think we dedicated a whole episode of the Rehashables to the Penguin, a whole episode to Severance, multiple episodes, and then now this. The one question I would have for you: in a year of awesome TV, where does Andor rank with the other things that you've watched so far? I know it's a hard conversation to have, and there's recency bias and all that stuff, but like, is Andor the best? Is Severance the best? I think Penguin was
Penguin was
Early-
right there in the pit too.
And,
So the
yeah.
4 things that I've watched are, you know, man, the Penguin was really good. And the Penguin was really good. I loved the Penguin, and their ending was such a home run. And Severance and was so good. Especially
all
the
these
ending.
shows are so different though. When you talk about like the thing, and you throw in the pit, like these shows are so different. Yeah, they are hard to compare that way, but I mean, I don't know. So, anyways, where do you land? You can't rank them.
I can't rank them. I'm sorry. It's because it's a cop out, but because it's such recency bias. Andor's only been on my mind for the last few weeks, but I remember how obsessed I was when the Penguin ended and like taking in all that media and stuff. And same thing with Severance, you know. So
yeah, super cop out. Yep,
I know
it
is. Well, what about you? What would you say?
They are all very, very good. I'd probably go with Severance because I
Severance
do
is your show.
It really is. Like it's everything that I love in a show. Like true like mystery, like things that I don't fully understand. Like this show has probably more emotional highs, you know, so I could see why you would like that. But in terms of like not understanding what I'm seeing in Severance and then being able to like speculate in my mind and create whatever connections I want in my head and then have those things answered at some point in the future, like that's what I love the most. But dude, I mean, these are all like
these are all 10 out of 10 shows. Like I really think like all those 4 that I mentioned are just 4 like amazing shows, and I don't know what's gonna happen. And the only thing is, unfortunately, like I don't know if Andor is gonna get like the award praise, you know, because it's a Star Wars show and that sort of stuff. It did get a nominated for season 1, I think, but you know, I don't know if Diego Luna is gonna get nominated for an Emmy as he should, you know what I mean, or Skarsgård, or all Deirdre and all those. It's an incredible show, and I think you kind of touched on it. We don't dive into that, but like, you just see what's happening in the world right now. This show was written before everything that's happening now, and it's just it almost like just makes watching it even more powerful, Yeah. So
I think that's a good place to end it, pal. Glad we got a chance to talk about it. Any last things before we go?
No, bud, that was it. We'll catch up. Maybe we'll do a little quicker, shorter episode, rehashables in the next few weeks of touch on some of the smaller, less big things that we've been watching, because there's a lot of good stuff out there right now. So
be awesome.
Watching Better Sister right now with pretty good Jessica Biel and what the hell's her name?
Jessica Biel. Jesus,
I know Jessica Biel's on Amazon Prime. It's really a really good. Oh, Elizabeth Banks, good little like person dead first episode. Who did it? Rich people, good looking. That's the formula, baby. I'm in. That's the formula.
So, all right, dude. Well, hey, great talk, pal.
All right,
we'll talk
cool.
soon. All right,
bye.